And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show, broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wang's at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, here's another gem from Assemblywoman Laura Friedman on Mike Bonin's podcast. The reason we have crime is because we haven't invested enough in our communities.
We also have to recognize that what makes communities safer is investments. You know, we've got communities that are low-income communities that are high crime communities, often because we haven't made the investments that gives people hope and that gives people pathways out of poverty.
What is she talking about?
I wish I knew.
We spend a fortune on the school system. We spend a fortune on social services. We're not getting much for it, but we spend a lot.
Maybe if we just had a few more after-school programs, the kids wouldn't grow up to be smashers and grabbers.
And these are also organized crime rings. Some of them are from out of state.
Well, we also should invest in Chile.
And we also just gave them $30 billion in EDD fraud. I don't think she's going to replace Adam Schiff. She's like fourth or fifth in the fundraising. But she's in Sacramento, and she's writing laws that the rest of us have to live by. And that's scary. 800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the RNC committeeman representing the state of California. You can get him online at ShawnSteel.com. Shawn Steel, welcome.
It's great to be here. I'm in the middle of Milwaukee getting to the convention center. I just saw Chris Christie at the airport. I'm seeing all kinds of long-fanged left-wing news reporters, hiding in the edges. I'm seeing a lot of church steeples. This was a state that just barely went for Biden, which made a big difference in the presidential election. And we're having our convention here, and the Democrats are having their convention in Chicago. And they just should hope that their casualty rate doesn't go more than 15%. Chicago's a nasty town. But you know what? It's like that moron Friedman. I mean, is that about the stupidest thing you've heard a politician say, more investment? I mean, will she continue saying that after she's mugged? I just don't get it.
Well, the latest, Shawn, and I know you've been traveling, but we've heard this from Karen Bass, we've heard this from George Gascon, and now Laura Friedman. They are now going after the news media, saying that the news media should stop showing videos of the smash and grabs. And if we would just stop showing videos of the smash and grabs, then people would realize that crime is actually going down.
The Chinese Communist Party have an identical philosophy because there's such a high amount of students from colleges not getting jobs. They're hiding those statistics. That's what totalitarian countries do. Democrats talking about transparency is the biggest oxymoron around. Of course they're going to hide this. But the trouble is, when you hit Topanga Plaza, when you hit Glendale, when you hit these nice suburban communities that keep voting liberals year after year, it hits home. And people are afraid to go shopping. I mean, imagine that as a concept.
Shawn, we've had two different insurance companies pull out of the state of California. We had Allstate and we had State Farm. You can be grandfathered in if you're already getting your homeowner's insurance through those companies, but if you buy a house and you want to start a new policy, they're not going to let you do that. Well, two more insurance companies have now pulled out of the California market. Amgard Insurance, which is a subsidiary of Berkshire Hathaway, they're gone. And now so is Falls Lake Insurance. They're also pulling out of the California market entirely. If this trend keeps up, especially in light of the hurricane that we were just hit with and all the water damage and mud damage that we have to deal with as a result of it, we're going to be uninsurable as a state.
That's not some random thinking. You have actuarials, PhDs, mathematicians figuring out, risk loss, and they're making a bet that they're going to lose a lot of money in California if they keep putting, bets on California being a durable state. But when you got woke folks in charge of emergency services like we saw in Lahaina, there's just no hope. And I just have almost no sympathy. If somebody's in a really tough part of town, get out. Well, you can. While you're alive. It's not worth it. Whatever amenities you think you have, you're just not going to get help. The police can't come. They've been straddled down. Emergency services are in trouble. People attack fire departments. Just get out. And I think we have to see there's a great migration. We've seen it out of California by the millions. But I'm including areas that are in Los Angeles. There's no reason why people have to be put in prison type of communities. They got $3 billion that Judge Carter's really anxiously looking to provide housing for 7,500 bums on the street. I mean, that's amazing. Drug addicts and criminals. And everything is just upside down in L.A. I have no sympathy for folks that choose to live there. It's just too bad.
Well, we're going to all end up buying our homeowners insurance through the state of California, which just seems like a complete nightmare to me.
Well, not only is that a nightmare, it's not a good bet. They're going to run out of money. That's the problem with socialism. They run out of other people's money, and they're going to run out of money. And if you think you're going to be safe with California insurance, that's like the last resort. When they go broke, you're up the river. No, that's not a good way to go. And by the way, that's not California. California's like the worst example. I still think Gavin's going to be a candidate for president because I don't see our buddy Biden getting over the hump, and he's going to try to sell that nonsense to the rest of America. And so I'm beating the drum.
We're speaking with
beating the drum. Don't ignore Gavin, but Gavin, of course, is the ultimate precursor of the worst cancer in America: deteriorating lifestyles and an attack against the middle class. And luckily, the party has a lot of really fresh candidates, fresh ideas. While Trump is going to be campaigning full time, trying to get out of jail. That might do it for him. Getting a lot of sympathy for that.
We're speaking with Shawn Steel, who's the RNC committeeman for the state of California. You can get him online at ShawnSteel.com. Let's talk about the debate. Let's have a preview of the debate because former President Trump is ahead by something like 50 points in the national polls, depending on which one you look at. The last Real Clear Politics average I saw had him up by about 50 points, which means this primary is not particularly close. He has opted to not participate in this debate or any of the others, which is the advice that I'm sure every strategist in the nation would give you. If you're up by 50 points, why bother? Why take on the liability? What do you make of that decision, and how do you think it's going to impact viewership?
It's a reasonable decision. Trump would have a lot to lose. He's got a lot of smart people: Vivek, Tim Scott, Chris Christie's ready in an attack dog mood. I saw him just minutes ago in the talking to reporters at the airport. And so it wouldn't be good. He'd have to be defending himself against a lot of competitors. On the other hand, if anybody thinks they know how this is going to be looking in October of next year, they're out of their mind. There may be neither Trump nor Biden running, or one of them may be running, or they both may be running. And then who knows what's going to happen with these other candidates? One may emerge and turn out to be a brilliant star. I mean, it's like a long series of stories that keeps changing. That narrative keeps changing. It's exciting stuff, actually. And most Americans haven't seen these candidates side by side. In fact, we never have. And it should be nice to see how Tim Scott, the quiet, cool, Reagan-esque guy, contrasts themselves to Vivek, this young entrepreneur. And Larry Elder's trying to get on the stage, and he may or he may not. I mean, there's a lot of fluctuating suspense here, and a lot of bets are being made. So you have to guard yourself. I mean, if it's all about Trump and Biden, well, it could very well be. It probably may be, but if things suddenly change in politics, they can. You better be ready to see who else is on the field.
What do you make of Ronna McDaniel's decision to not allow Larry Elder on stage, despite the fact that he met all the criteria? He has the 40,000 donors, he has the polls, and now she's saying, well, this time we're not accepting Rasmussen because they're doing work for the Trump campaign. Well, Larry didn't pay for that poll. That's not a Larry commission poll.
Yeah, I'm not even sure it was her decision, and I don't have the details on that. And I'm not sure if that's actually going to go that way. I mean, there may be a change of mind, so it's not a firm decision. Again, the threshold is 1%, and I don't know how many other polls have been out there showing that Larry or others have achieved that threshold or not. Larry has got the 40,000 donors. He's got some 40 states with a lot of people that have given him support. I think it's a close call, but I haven't seen an official statement on that yet. There may be one, but I've been traveling since 7 a.m. this morning, and I just got here to the hotel.
Well, we just spoke with Larry, and Larry said that he was not told that Rasmussen polls don't count. He would be happy to provide them with other polls showing him exceeding 1%. But they didn't say when he turned it in that Rasmussen was one that they wouldn't accept this time around. It smacks me a lot of what happened with Shirley Weber and her trying to keep him off the ballot in California because he provided her with all the documents that the state of California demanded, but you were supposed to turn in 2 copies of it. One of the copies was complete. The other one was missing a couple of pages, but instead of asking them to do it correctly, she just tried to keep him off the ballot, and it looks kind of similar with what the RNC is doing with him here.
Yeah, it looks, Larry's got a lot of friends, especially in the L.A. media market, especially in California. He was our leader in the recall, and I think it's going to strike a lot of people. There's something very short-sighted about this, but I'm going to find out more. I'm not convinced it's over and the door has been slammed, but I think Larry's talking about a lawsuit. And there's going to be supposed to be a big press conference he'll have tomorrow. I think things are up in the air. I don't think it's finalized. I may be wrong, but there's a lot of cross currents here with lots of multiple agendas and a lot of candidates for everything under the sun here. And a lot of the players are here. So I think anything can change.
Do you think the field is set, or do you think we could see more entrants into the race? And I say that because the very popular governor of the state of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, is believed to, well, he's officially saying he's not running, but there are people, including Rupert Murdoch, who apparently would really like to see him jump into this race. Do you think the field is set, or do you think we could see it expand?
Well, I think you're going to see it expand. Again, we've never seen a president in office try to put his chief competitor in jail on so many jurisdictions. This would be embarrassing to most Latin America banana republics. And Biden has carefully orchestrated a persecution campaign with local authorities and federal authorities while protecting his son at all costs. It's making him there's been no more greater corruption in the political sense in American history. So you'll have that variable. Whether or not they get Trump, we don't know. But there's a lot of knives out for Trump. Youngkin, of course, has been a brilliant governor. And he's really changed things in Virginia. That was a state that was drifting way out to the blue. And now he's brought it back to the purple. That makes him a very interesting, attractive candidate because he's got a record. He seems to speak well, and we want to know more about him. But my bet is let's have as many possible quality candidates as possible and watch what the next steps are. The future is very uncertain right now. There's no guarantee. If Biden's attorney general is successful and they're able to arrest and put away Donald Trump, there's going to be a tremendous social dislocation in America. There's going to be a lot of hunger for change, a lot of demands for change. Luckily, the Republican Party has a lot of great leaders.
What do you make of Trump's decision in regard to the counter-programming, whereas instead of participating in the debate, he's going to be doing a sit-down with Tucker Carlson?
I think it's brilliant. The one thing that Trump, A lot of people get antagonized. He says rude things that I don't think he should. Shoots from the hip. He makes them interesting and authentic. For him to do that is just typical Trump branding. He'll get out in front of the parade, and even if he has to create his own parade, and it keeps working. So, of course, there's old-fashioned competition, and the irony is pretty obvious. You've got Tucker Carlson, who's unfairly fired from Fox, that will be hosting the show. Who knows how many eyeballs are going to get. The good news is there's going to be a lot more Americans hearing a conservative message than there otherwise would have been. And I got a feeling a lot of people are going to be watching both. Not simultaneously. They'll record it or they'll kind of switch back and forth. But it makes the whole level of what's going on in the Republican Party a lot more exciting. It's pretty depressing for the Democrats, especially when they have to think about Kamala Harris. I mean, it's a one-way trip into oblivion. I like the difference.
Shawn Steel, RNC committeeman representing the state of California, live from Milwaukee, which is where the GOP debate will be tomorrow night on the Fox News Channel. You can catch Shawn online at ShawnSteel.com. Shawn, thanks so much for stopping by.
You bet. Thanks.
If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you want to go back and listen to our interview earlier today with Larry Elder, who's going to be all over the news for the next couple of days, that's easy to do.
That's right. Go to KABC.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You can search for The John Phillips Show on YouTube, subscribe to the playlist there. There are so many different ways to listen, and it is so easy to do. Anybody could figure out how to download this podcast. Right, Barbara Ferrer? How do you download the John Phillips Show?
I have no idea.
Okay, she has no idea, but I bet you do, and I bet you can do it, and then you'll have all this content for whenever you want it.
Well, when the storm hit over the weekend, we saw a number of flight cancellations. It turned the air grid into a mess. However, not everything canceled into and out of Burbank, John Wayne, Palm Springs, and Ontario, places where the rain was very heavy. Part of the reason that they didn't cancel those flights was because the airlines are under intense pressure from our Secretary of Transportation, Marvin Zindler.
When there's a problem with a government system, we're going to own it, we're going to find it, and we're going to fix it.
Marvin Zindler, Eyewitness News.
So because of that, the airlines just let the planes take off and land in the storm. Well, when you do that and safety takes a back seat to not pissing off Marvin Zindler, you're going to end up with some problems. And Randy, that's exactly what happened at John Wayne Airport.
A video has now gone viral of a plane landing Alaska Airlines Seattle to John Wayne. And as the plane was landing, there was a problem with the landing gear and sparks started flying.
That's right. In fact, we saw the video, what was it, yesterday before it went on the news?
Yes. We heard the version with all the curse words in it.
Oh, yes. Because you wouldn't want to be on that plane, and I wouldn't want to be on that plane, but that plane was filled with people. For more, here's KCAL.
The tropical storm also contributed this. Sparks fly during a rough landing at John Wayne Airport. Good evening, everyone. I'm Pat Harvey. Now, the plane was missing one of its landing gears, and our KCAL.
I think you want that.
Yeah, generally speaking, you need those.
And our KCAL News reporter Joy Benedict spoke with the passenger who took that video, and she joins us live from the newsroom. Joy.
Yeah, I mean, this is quite a sight to see. I mean, it's terrifying just to watch. I can't imagine being one of the 112 people on board this plane. Experts say it was just a dangerous combination of Hillary's wind and rain, a short runway, and a heavy plane that led to a very tense moment on this flight from Seattle.
Why is he turning around?
It was a terrifying...
The original version was fun to listen to.
It It was a terrifying moment on this plane bound for Orange County, as passengers on board recorded the moment the left side landing gear failed. Sparks flew as the plane skidded down the runway, the engine dragging on the ground.
Yikes.
You know the difference between a good landing and a great landing, Randy?
What's that?
A good landing is one that you walk away from. A great landing is when you can use the airplane again.
Dragging on the ground.
I could feel it. We were going in a bit faster than I would normally fly.
So as we were making the final approach, it is just like keep shaking.
So 16-year-old Abi Aminini pulled out his phone.
Normally,
he went on TikTok.
Of course, because that's where we resolve these things.
It's one thing to see the video of the sparks flying from the plane. It's a whole other thing to see that video in a 15-second clip with Taylor Swift music under it.
Normally, this type of shaking is just like normal turbulence, but like it normally doesn't happen like this close to the ground.
There's sparks outside.
People were screaming. Aminini and his friend, Akil Arunkumar, were in shock.
Or did they say anything ahead of time, like brace yourself, we're going to have a rough landing?
No. There was no.
It's a little extra for that.
Okay, you're landing in a hurricane. I think that's the assumption.
No. There was no.
That pilot's already white-knuckling this landing. Leave him alone.
No. There was no announcement at all.
It was just, hey guys, your landing gear collapsed, so we'll be stuck here for now. And then that was it.
It was Alaska Airlines Flight 1288 from Seattle to John Wayne Airport. Tonight, that plane is still on the runway and badly damaged as one engine sits on the ground and the landing gear is not visible.
Unfortunately, this particular landing was not successful.
Captain Ross Amer.
I mean, the plane did land.
That's true. They walked away. I don't know if they can use that plane again for a while, but they did walk away.
Imagine you're going to board. You're at an airport like Burbank where you're walking up on side of the plane. You're going up the stair car. You see the scorch marks on the engine. This the plane we're using?
Was it a 737 MAX too?
Captain Ross Amer is a retired pilot and aviation expert.
Could the pilot have known this was going to happen before they landed?
Obviously not. They didn't know it was going to be so hard. And otherwise they would have gone around.
But he says other planes were canceled because of Hillary, and he believes that weather played a factor in this hard landing.
Perhaps they hit some wind shear just before touchdown, and the runway was wet.
Orange County has a short runway, and under these conditions, he says LAX would have been his choice.
Wow, I've never heard that before.
We found the one guy who prefers LAX over Orange County.
Would have been his choice.
It's a 737-800.
You know, if they got rid of Katie Porter's student teacher housing, maybe they could extend the runway at John Wayne.
Have you ever flown out of John Wayne before?
I have not.
It's like taking off in a helicopter. And you know why they do that? The airport is in Santa Ana, but you fly right over the expensive homes in Newport Beach. And the last thing they want to hear is the engines of a 737.
Would have been his choice.
It's a 737-800, one of the latest models. But unfortunately, it's much bigger, heavier, and it requires a much higher landing speed. That makes it harder.
Dude, this is crazy.
As for the passengers, they are all okay, and they were escorted off the plane by Orange County firefighters.
But they all had to sit on the tarmac while it's pouring down rain, and like 30 of them could get off at a time and take a bus to the terminal.
That sounds so miserable.
And they were escorted off the plane by Orange.
And God help you if you needed to use the lavatory.
My guess is the put your seatbelt sign on was illuminated the entire time.
And they were escorted off the plane by Orange County firefighters. And although it was a terrifying experience, these young men say they are just thankful.
You have to give the pilot credit. You're landing in high winds, low visibility, and with one of the shortest commercial runways, it's a recipe for disaster.
Boy, this 16-year-old really understands the ins and outs of John Wayne Airport.
Well, he had plenty of time to learn about it when he was sitting there on the runway.
And with one of the shortest commercial runways, it's a recipe for disaster. So you have to give some pat on the back to the pilot there.
Now, Alaska Airlines did issue a statement saying there was an issue with the landing gear and that their priority is taking care of the passengers who deplaned without their luggage. The NTSB tells me they are aware of the incident but have not launched an investigation. Pat?
Okay. This is where the government screwed it up. We all hate the airlines because the airlines charge us for everything. They lose our bags. They delay our flights. They cancel our flights. They leave us stranded. We're all familiar with the program. And so the government has put a ton of pressure on the airlines to stop abusing us. But there's a difference. If the flight is delayed because there's something mechanically wrong with the plane, that's a legitimate delay. If the flight is canceled because there's something mechanically wrong with the plane, that's a legitimate cancellation. If they have to delay or cancel the flight because there's bad weather, there's a weather event like, a hurricane, that's a legitimate delay. What we hate is when they delay or cancel flights because they can't do things like properly staff them, or they don't do things like cater them. Some administrative screw up. Those are the situations where the government should come down on them like a ton of bricks, because people are planning on being in a certain location at a certain time. And if you can't cater the flight, and therefore the flight can't take off or won't take off until the catering is done, that's on you, airlines. If you can't make sure there are enough pilots in the cockpit or flight attendants in the back or baggage handlers or gate agents or whatever the case may be, and flights have to cancel because of your screw up, then you should get fined. Then you should have the government breathing down your neck. But you don't want them to put planes in the air that aren't mechanically suitable. You don't want them to fly planes through storms that would require a delay or cancellation. Because I was in Orange County this weekend. From about 3 p.m. to about 9 p.m., the rain was bad. The weather was not good. But then later on in the evening, it cleared up a bit. Now, I know at John Wayne, they have noise restrictions. So they have a short runway, and I don't think you can take off or land at that airport after 9 p.m. So that means if you were to have delayed or canceled that flight, that plane would have had to land at LAX, and they didn't want to do that because then they'd have to bus everyone in to Orange County. Well, fine. If the storm is there between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. and that flight is supposed to land at 8:30, cancel the flight. Or delay it until the next morning. Or figure something out. But don't have the pilots land a plane on a short runway when the weather is awful. Because, yeah, it was an awful video to watch because you saw the sparks that were shooting up on the runway and nothing caught fire, thankfully. But that really could have ended in a bad way. It didn't happen, but it could have happened. And I think that the government is partially to blame here because safety should always be the first priority.